Good morning, folks. Turn on the chat here. All right. So we're going to finish up chapter 5 today. We may have some time after we finish that to take a look at chapter 6. We'll see how it goes. All right, so chapter 5. Last time I tried to get across that there are two, there's a really important step in designing anything, or really just creating anything, and that is the planning stage. So, as you move forward and maybe start a new career, some people in here are graphic design majors, some people are programming majors. It's a very diverse class, but all of you will probably work on some sort of project at some point in your job. And do not skip the planning step, and make sure that the more time you spend in this step, the less time you'll have to fix things later. And this step is one of the reasons that a lot of projects fail. Okay. We had talked about organizing a website and looked at some site maps that introduced some problems here that you want to avoid. We talked about those last time. You can check that out. Okay. So the rest of this is just, almost common sense type things, design principles. If you look at a website, you will probably find these things tend to stick out. All right. So, this is specifically for designing a website, these principles, but they can be applied to anything where you're trying to convey information with text and images and videos. All right. If you're making some sort of paper print product, obviously you're not going to put a video on there, but a lot of these things can be applied in different areas. All right, so the first one is repetition, and this can involve, you can think of this as almost a theme. Everything is part of the same theme, so fonts in certain areas are consistent. We're not using 100 different fonts for different sections. If you want to use a different font for your menu, and a different font for your headers, and a different font for your body text, as long as you keep that consistent, it's not going to draw attention and kind of distract people from the goal of the site. Okay, contrast. This is one that really stands out. If you try to read something and you can't because of the font color and the background color choices are too similar, this one's easy to avoid. Just use opposite ends of the spectrum here. So if you have a light font color, use a dark background, or vice versa. Morning Miles. All right, and I've been calling you Alex and I've been calling you Miles back and forth, and which I'm assuming you prefer Alex because that's the name you chose on here. Let me know if I'm right on that. And I appreciate that you attend these videos because a lot of people watch them later, or I'm assuming based on the lack of assignments being turned in and completed correctly, there's probably a lot of people not watching these, right? Okay. But me telling you that now doesn't really help them. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Alex. Okay, so colors, generally when you think of contrast, you think of colors, but you can also use, placement and borders, and the most important one is white space. All right, so if you take a look at the picture here of this website, all right, you'll notice there's empty space around each different section. So for example, we have white space here in between these different sections. That helps to make it more digestible for people while they're looking at it. If it was all crammed together, it would be hard to know where to start. And if you look at a site where all the information is crammed together, it'll be aggravating. So again, a lot of these things are common sense, but maybe you haven't thought about them. Maybe it's things that have bothered you, but you don't understand why. All right, proximity. This one, things that the menu items should be in the same place together. Your content should be in the same place. So here they're putting it in the middle of the page, and these outside sections, here we have the header, so everything in the header goes there. Over here we have the endangered child alert, and so I guess just some extra information and useful links. And then on the left we have the navigation menu for the site. In this subsection down here, they're listing some different content pages, and that is just grouping things properly. All right, you shouldn't have menu items in other places. I'm not going to, if this is the section here where I list, the most used content pages, I wouldn't group that in into other sections. Again, common sense type things. Alignment. This is also one that you may not realize it's bugging you, but here we have these sections aligned, vertically and horizontally. And if something was slightly off, so for example, and I guess I haven't updated this in the latest version. If you saw something like this, okay, we're looking here. There's something that's sticking out that's different than everything else, and so it's going to draw your attention. If things are misaligned, people tend to, look at those, because they're trying to interpret what they're looking at, and now they have to try to guess. Is this a subsection here? Is this another header? What part, how are things related on the page? So you want to have alignment on the page. It makes it easier to read, and again, it keeps people focused on what you want them to see and not focused on problems. All right, so taking a look at these for design principles. These are things that you should look at when you're designing a website. Okay, so in our class, we haven't really designed a website. We've just been learning HTML elements and CSS properties. And then with all those tools that you learn, you will be able to apply those and put them together to create, a well-designed website, or at least avoid some of the common mistakes. So I used to do a homework assignment where I asked you to find examples on websites where they did not use the design principles, and through that I have been introduced to a ton of poorly designed websites, and I've picked a few. Well, I've picked one that kind of does everything wrong. So let's take a look here. Okay, so this is arngren.net. I have no idea what this site is for, not just because of the layout and all of the design principles that are being ignored, but I have no idea what, it's not in English, which is no problem. So if, someone understood this language, the design principles are still making this difficult. All right, so, let's look at each one. Repetition, all right. We have links everywhere. I don't want to scroll down too far there. Be careful if you want to find your own examples of terribly designed websites. I just thought of another one. If you just look up bad websites, you can probably imagine what the results are going to be. But here, this is an example, I think, where on purpose they're breaking the rules. Where on this site, I don't think they're doing it on purpose. Okay, so we have problems with repetition, contrast, everything's crammed together, so it's kind of hard to tell, what is part of what here. We have sections that are, this is for repetition. Some have borders, some don't. How is that decided? What does it mean? We have all kinds of vehicles and electronics. Is this a site advertising these? Is this a site giving you information about these? I actually have not clicked on any of this, so let's see. All right. So here's a content page for this product, I guess. They're using different colors everywhere. Here's a bunch of pictures, and then under that there's more information, and on a website that you're viewing on a computer, because I'm viewing this on my laptop, you should really avoid horizontal scrolling, and this is kind of the unspoken rule. It's extremely annoying, especially if the text goes across, and you have, what's the problem there? If you read one line, you have to scroll over, and then to start the next line, you have to scroll all the way back. That's not providing a good user experience, which is a term for, the usability of your website. You don't want to aggravate the people using your website. Let's go back. Proximity, everything's crammed together. That one's simple. And alignment, things are kind of everywhere. So this site is easy to notice all of the incorrect design principles. On a more professional site or more modern site, check for various principles. So for you people watching the video, I want you to take a look at this site and see if you can identify some design principles used incorrectly here. And then maybe we'll talk about how we can fix those. Alright, so this World's Worst Website here, it gives a lot of more specific examples. So let's see, animated pictures that are distracting, using a bunch of different font colors here. Again, animations that are distracting. You can put scrolling text on a website pretty easily. You never should. You should never move text that people are trying to read. Alright, again, that's pretty common sense. Down here you can see, you know, I can't even read that bottom one. Alright, let's see if you want to read it. We can select it here. We can see I'm fastest is what it says. You shouldn't have to open the developer tool kit over here to read stuff on a website, and you probably don't see this. I don't ever see this anywhere unless someone's putting it on there on purpose. So I'm surprised it's still supported because I don't know what the point of it is. Okay. Okay, so again, you can kind of see a lot here. It's almost hard to identify all the problems because there's so many. Okay, so I think in this example, it's kind of boring to look at well-designed websites because you look at those all the time normally. It's more fun to identify really bad websites. Learn by example. Negative examples can still help you learn. All right. Learn from the mistakes of others. That kind of thing. Okay. Anyway, the rest of these are just tips. So, people using the web, browsing the web, I feel like such a fogey saying it that way, but the web is just part of the internet. The internet was invented obviously before the web. Okay. If you want to know about the history, it's in chapter 1. It's not terribly useful for using this as a skill, but it's interesting. Alright, anyway, don't use long blocks of text. People browsing do not want to read a bunch. They want to get the information quickly. So only use long blocks of text for something like if you are putting in a news article or a blog post or something where people are expecting a long block of text, but don't use it for just the general parts of your site. Try to be concise. It can help to use bullet points. This allows people to digest the information a piece at a time. A lot of this writing for the web also applies to writing emails. So there are a ton of tips that are based on psychology that can help you write a good email, and that's a skill that you should practice. A lot of people get caught up in the formality of writing an email. Should I make it like a letter? Do I need to include a greeting and a signature? It really just depends on the situation. If you're talking to someone you never met before, you want to be formal. Depending on their reply, you can kind of relax it a bit. If you want someone to do something or multiple things, at the end of the email, summarize using bulleted list or a numbered list to remind them what to do. because they're not going to want to reread everything you wrote they can miss some things. And so also the reason I bring that up is a lot of the emails I receive from students, they just never learned how to use email properly. So I'm telling you now, use these tips. Don't write a whole story, just summarize. I get a lot of stories of why people miss class and stuff. All I need to know is, why. I'm not gonna, assume you're lying, because if you are lying to skip class or skip assignments or get more time on assignments, you're only hurting yourself. So you can just be concise. Hey, I was sick. What were the assignments? And then, especially if you're emailing a teacher, tell them what class you're in, what section it is. That you can find that on Canvas, and the name of the assignment or the chapter. The more information, I just told you be concise, but the more information you can provide, the easier they're going to be able to help you. So I usually put the emails where it's just their name. They send it from a personal email. It says, can I get help on the assignment? I have 10 sections, so I put those emails at the end because I don't have time to look through all the sections to find, where you are, what was the last, I don't know what assignment you're doing. Anyway, be specific, because if you're not, it's going to take multiple emails back and forth to do something, and it might take multiple days. So it's very aggravating. So the other thing, it's not really related to this, but if you want to increase your chances of getting a response or having someone do something, just use the phrase thanks in advance, because it puts the obligation on the other person. You're already thanking them for something they haven't done, assuming that they're going to do it, and a lot of times that'll help you get things done. Okay, so again, these all apply to emails, web pages. You can look up stuff about email etiquette. I'm sure we have a class that goes over it, but I go over it in internet systems or intro to the internet or something. That's more of a class for people that aren't internet literate. Okay, but you can learn all kinds of things that you didn't know. All right. So basically, this is saying, dumb it down, be concise. It makes it more efficient. If you need to include important information, don't cut that out just to make it shorter. But don't include extraneous information. Okay, here we go. Design easy to read text. Again, extremely common sense. Why would you make something hard to read? They recommend using common fonts. Part of the reason is when you're designing the website, fonts can have different sizes, and not every browser has access to every font. If you use a font the browser doesn't have access to, it'll use its default. And if you didn't design your site to use that default, then it may, whatever browser they're using may just mess up your whole site, because it'll make things wrap around. But if you design it with one of these, Arial, everything has Arial. I don't know about the other ones here. They're using these as examples. I'm sure these are all available defaults in browsers. We can check. So I'll look up Google Chrome default fonts. Okay. It's funny that it is. Okay. That's a very specific question. Here we go. Times New Roman is a standard font for Chrome. Default font for Firefox. And if you're designing a website, You would be testing it on all major browsers. So, you know, Edge, most people are probably using Edge, even though you may hate it. The reason people are using it is that's what comes with their computer. It opens by default if they have a Windows machine. They may not even know there are other browsers. They may not even know they're using a browser. They're using the internet, right? So when you're designing a website, you have to consider all. Remember, consider your audience. You have to consider all the browsers. So you're designing a site that'll work in every browser, at least the major ones. So Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Opera. And I just happen to list those in what I consider the, my opinion on what the best browsers are. I haven't used Firefox's latest version. I think it's the newest. And usually when a browser comes out with a new version, it has all kinds of optimizations that can beat out the other ones. But it's hard to switch between browsers. I'm kind of locked into Chrome because you can tie it into your Google account, and then you can be more efficient by using that. Okay, Firefox also uses Times New Roman. So anyway, you can use you're going to want to try to use one of these fonts, unless you have a reason to use another font. Some companies have specific styles they want you to follow. And so if they want you to use, their brand font, then that'll be easy. They told you what they want you to use. Okay. If you're talking to people that don't understand web design and the limitations regarding fonts, you can explain to them in a way, that it's going to affect their potential audience if they don't use a standard font. Okay. Maybe they don't care, though. Remember, your goal is to design the website in the way that's best for the audience, which means not the best for you and not the best for your client, because they're not the ones that are going to be using the site. If they're, if it's an e-commerce site or something, it's their customers. So you can, kind of explain things in that context. It's really easy to convince people to make good decisions if you have reasons behind those decisions. Okay, and you can find that kind of information online. I talked about this last time. Best practices, web colors. All right, and so if you have some sort of source to reference, you can convince someone to trust you on choosing or making decisions about the design. They can understand that. Okay. Here we go. We already just talked about this. Use columns instead of wide areas of horizontal text. All right. People don't want to read from one side of the screen to another. There's a lot of principles from newspaper layouts that are applied to websites. We've had newspapers for hundreds of years, and they figured out, organizing it into columns makes it a lot easier to read for people. They don't have to move their eyes as far across the page and lose their place. It requires a lot less effort to read information from a column. So let's see if we can find an example of that. Here we go. We have 4 columns here with information. This is really about text, though, so let's see if we can find a page with a bunch of text. All right, nope. Oh well, let's see. Let me push more of my classes here. I think one of the things that hurts, these IT programs the most, let's see, information technology train. What does that mean? I don't even know if I'm included in that. Yes. Okay, so here, you know, it's only one line, so this is probably okay, but if I zoom out here, I'm sure it'll wrap around. Oops, not zoom out, zoom in. Right. And so, you know, I have to read from here, then go all, you know, my eyes have to go all the way back here. And this seems like a minor thing probably to some of you, but it's so easy to fix. Why wouldn't you optimize it like that? Okay, so this could easily be put in a column, and you know, I'll show you how easy it is, and this is what we'll learn in chapter 6. Go ahead and select this, and I've already got some CSS on here. Go ahead and add another rule. We'll set margin dash right to, let's try 100 pixels. Okay, maybe that's not enough. Let's set it to 300 pixels. And that's all it takes. Now it's organized in a much easier to read column. So it's really that easy. Okay. And you know, in chapter 3 we talked about how you can control the layout of your entire site with one external style sheet. You know, I'm not going to go in and make every body of text have a margin of, a right margin of 300. That would be, you know, impossible, waste of time. But it's not hard to do. Have I said that enough? Okay. This one's kind of funny to me. Carefully choose text in hyperlinks. So, you know, what is the element for creating a hyperlink? That's the anchor element. And we've already talked about how, unfortunately, it's unfortunately named an anchor, which is not a term anyone uses, I don't think, outside of, you know, boat anchors. All right. I don't even understand the context of why it's called an anchor. It may be lost to history. Anyway, when you set a hyperlink up, you have to provide two things. You know, a location where it's going to send you, and the text for the link. All right. In the beginning of the web, it was a good practice to put "click here" on hyperlinks because you know, computer mice were still new. People didn't know what a hyperlink was, and so you kind of told them what to do. Click here, and then they would click, and they'd be like, you know, they would be, oh wow, this brings me to another page. At this point in history, you know, the web is ubiquitous. You can't really avoid it. People know what a hyperlink is. More people know what a hyperlink is than or how to use one anyway. So instead of using click here, it's a cliche to use that, and you know, it's unnecessary extra text. You can just put hyperlinks in keywords or phrases, and you don't want to do entire sentences. You don't want to do block elements, entire block elements. I'm not sure. No, I am sure. In chapter 4, they talked about how to put a hyperlink on an image. So let's go. Let's just do a little example here. Okay. What am I doing an example of? Oh. The book may not have made this clear, so I wanted to show you guys an example. You know, here's a hyperlink, index.html. I have my opening anchor tag, and I have my href attribute with a location to go, and I can put some text in there, but I just said don't use click here. So let's put Apple. Okay. Put a hyperlink in there. All right. If you remember what nesting elements is, you can nest an element inside of a hyperlink, and that converts the entire element into a hyperlink. So in this example, I just have the word Apple in an anchor tag. And so it's only going to allow, if I click right here, you click around it, it's not going to do anything. If I click on it, it'll bring me to wherever I want to go, or wherever it's listed. Okay, but if I put this in a paragraph and I put the anchor tag around it, it's going to make the entire paragraph element a link. And so here it is. It looks the same, but pay attention to the cursor here. And for people that may not be, this is kind of an advanced, this is something you would notice and you probably just take for granted. It's easy to take for granted, but the cursor changes so that the computer can tell you what you're going to make it do. So here, when you see this left-facing cursor, the arrow cursor, this is telling you you can select things with this. On the web, if it's a hand, it's a hyperlink. But if I go to the right of this word, why is this empty space part of the hyperlink? You don't want to do this, because if someone clicks here, they are going to be sent to that link, and they may not have wanted to go to that link, but you've kind of created this area here, and you can see that we've looked at this before. You can see that area. I'm going to add embedded CSS here using the style element, opening and closing style tag, no attributes, and then inside you can put CSS code. And what was I going to do here? Oh yeah, we're going to put a background color on paragraphs so we can see, and again, I've showed you this before. It's going to be more important in next chapter. We're going to learn that we can adjust this, the property that makes this happen. Okay, so we can see if we put a background color on here, the paragraph is actually taking up a whole section, the whole horizontal section of whatever container it's in, and right now it's just in the body. Okay. If we put this whole thing in a div, okay, opening tag, closing tag, and I'm just putting it in there so that we can manipulate it and show you that paragraph as a block element is going to take up all the horizontal space wherever it is inside of whatever container it's in. So let's put it in a div, and let's set a CSS rule to change the size of the div. Okay, make it small. Okay, and so here, the link goes across the space of the div, but it does not include the area to the right because this is outside of the div element. All right. So a little bit about hyperlinks there. Chapter 4 also asks you to convert an image to a hyperlink. Okay, and some of you may still be working on Chapter 4 or making corrections. So I'm just going to demonstrate here how to include an image on the page using Replit. Okay, so generally nowadays you'll see menus displayed as 3 dots. All right, it's kind of a web standard. It's in Chrome. We have 3 dots up here for the menu. It's here in Replit. In the Lakeland site, if you are looking on the mobile site, let's see. We actually need to shrink it to get the mobile site. Okay.
They convert the menu into this 3 lines. And they're labeling it menu, so that helps too. And when you click it, it opens up. Laying things out vertically on mobile is the best way to do it. 1 column. And I think in chapter 7 we talk about that. Okay. Anyway, to add a picture, you click this menu, upload file, okay. You find your picture, and you just hit upload, and now it's here, it's available. We can use that in the page. I'm going to put it before my div here, so it'll be at the top of the page. And so to tell it what picture to use, we give it the src for source attribute. We put the name of the file, which here we're actually putting the path to the file. Looks like you're just putting the name, but this is saying look in the same folder as index.html and look for this file. It's a more accurate way to describe what's going on, which is important. So if I run this, there's my image. It's not a hyperlink. How do I make it a hyperlink? Well, the same way I made this paragraph a hyperlink, I just nest the image inside of anchor tags. And one of the exercises asks you to create a web page that contains an image, and when you click the image, it will load the full-size image in the browser. Okay. And it sounds complicated, but it's actually, very simple. So for my anchor tag href, I just put the name of the file. And so I'm telling it to go to that file, it'll open it in the browser. If the browser is able to load images, it'll just be the image on the page. Okay, and I can put my closing anchor tag here. I can run that, and now this image is a hyperlink. If I click on it, it goes to that file. Okay. In this case, the image is fairly small. Let's load a bigger one so we can see that better. A higher resolution picture. Here we go. Put this little farm. And the name is terrible because it was probably created when I downloaded it. So let's change it so we know what we're working with. Okay, let's change the image from corny to farm.png. Okay, I'll zoom back out, run. Okay, so this is a huge image. On this web page, it is creating a lot of just. Even if I load it in a larger window here, okay, I'm gonna have to scroll around to figure out where. You don't want to put an image this large on your page. So we can shrink it down. And so if I want to change this image only, and maybe not affect other images, in the image tag I can add a class attribute. I'll put farm img as the name of my class, and then up here I can create a rule for that. Dot farm img. You got to match the name. In CSS, the dot means class. In HTML, the word class means class. So you have to understand that these are, connected together. Curly brace. Let's set the height and width to 500 px. Open the new page. Open the page in a new tab. Okay, if you didn't know about this button, it's very useful. Over here, this preview is good for testing out, if things are working on your page, but it's not really good to see the layout. So we want to open it in a new tab, fresh. Okay, so there's my picture. I have a link on it that goes to farm.png. form.png, the full-size image. When I click on it, it'll put that image here. We can see in the address up here. It's probably hard for you to see, but it's the name of the website, and then / farm.png. So what we're looking at here is just the file. Okay, we can zoom in, zoom out. This is using Chrome's ability to open images here. Okay, so that was a problem a lot of people had, so I thought I'd mention it. Problems with images. It's important to be able to add images to your page. Otherwise, you could just make a book, textbook or something. Okay, or a catalog. Some places still have catalogs. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about that. Okay, more obvious things. Check your spelling. There's a really great tool I've been using, because in my job I don't do a whole lot of formal writing. And if you are going to become a graphic designer or a software developer, basically for gaining skills to get a career outside of using your associate's degree and just get a technical job, those are both good jobs. There's no they're technical. You have to have really good, you have to have proper skills. It's a respectable job. Oh yeah, so it's called Grammarly. Some of you may already know about it. Okay, I installed the Chrome extension here, but if you have it enabled, it'll in a lot of places it'll work automatically. But if you have text you're typing in somewhere and it's not giving you suggestions, you can put it here. So let's see. Let's find some text that someone else wrote, so I can show you just how useful this tool is. Grammar for some people is the difference between whether they will use your site or not, unfortunately. It's also a good sign that whoever made that site or the company that's being represented by that site has no attention to detail. So it's a huge red flag if you have improper grammar and misspellings on your site. People will question, things. Okay, let's look up. We're not gonna find anything on fonts. Let's look up short story. There we go. Free short stories online. All right. Okay. So it looks like it's just a bunch of lists. Okay, the Library of Babel. I haven't read that one. Okay, it doesn't exist. So next is the lottery. All right. And now I'm back to this page. Apparently it didn't work. File not found. Okay, I don't think the site's going to help us find a short story. Let's try something else. A website with a bunch of lists here. This kind of screams clickbait. And it's just going to keep sending me to pages so they can load ads and make money. Wasting my time. Okay. Short stories. Iconic. Okay, here's a blog. Okay. Instead of looking for a short story, let's just use this text. Someone wrote this. Human wrote this. Just paste it in here. I do pay for the premium version, so it gives you some different options here, which is both kind of terrifying in some respects and very useful in others. Because basically what it's doing is it is controlling the style of your writing. So it's not really your voice. But sometimes when you're doing objective writing, you don't want your voice in there. So let's go general. It's a blog post. It's informal. Casual. Tone is neutral. Okay, and the intent is to inform. Okay, so what I like about this is it gives you suggestions, or it shows you problems, and it tells you why it thinks it's a problem. And so here, okay, it appears that you have a necessary comma. What level of grammar do you remember? Did you learn that in elementary school? Did you learn it in junior high? Did you pay attention? Some people learn grammar just by reading, and you can get a basic level of grammar to help you understand what you're reading, but you're not. It's rare to find someone who knows every grammar rule, because English is full of exceptions, which means it's not the best. It's not always the best. Okay, so here it says, unnecessary comma, and I'm trying to see here. Okay, it's the perfect way to spend a lunch break. The moments while dinner is in the oven, or your last few minutes before bedtime. So here they're saying the moments while dinner is in the oven or your last few minutes before bedtime is, honestly what I would do is change this. Okay. No, it's a tool that people can use that will help them designing or using proper grammar without much thought. Okay, here as well as is kind of a cliche phrase. You can just put "and" there, be more concise. Okay, and so now it tells me, this is good by their standards. What I like to do is take this after that, put it in Word, run its grammar check. Also, if you have access to that, you can use this for writing a paper and helping you prepare. It's totally legitimate to use something like this, like spell check or a grammar check. Computers are getting smart enough now that they can, try to identify the intent of what you're writing and help you make it more clear. Okay. Are we done with text? We are. All right. And I'll post that in the chat. That is called Grammarly. Unfortunately, they're not sponsoring me, which would be nice. But I think it's a valuable tool that you could use. Definitely use your entire educational career and even in your job. Because you don't want to look stupid if you're sending emails to people you don't know, because it's a first impression. All right. We kind of already talked about color. Oh, I was gonna do, we talked about it with contrast. I think I showed you in chapter 3 when we were changing color with CSS. There's some tools where you can find common themes, so you don't have to try to figure out what things work together the best on your own. Color has meaning, and it has different meanings to different people, and so those people are your audience. Sometimes a website is going to have an extremely broad audience, like Amazon. Okay. Is there anyone that Amazon would consider not part of the audience, their audience. Probably not. And then we looked at those examples of the NASA website and what was the other one? Bureau of Labor Statistics. All right. And the NASA website, used a darker background in the example picture. And, the night sky is dark, space is black, so it kind of makes sense. Fits in with the theme and makes sense. And, that's a reason why they picked it. The person making it didn't just say, oh, I like black, we're going to make it. They have a reason. Okay. So here they're talking about, common themes for different situations, different audiences. For kids, to keep their attention, you can have bright colors. You just want, for everyone, you just want something consistent and non-offensive. And here we go. You want to make an emo site for young adults because they're all emo. And for a website that people who may, a large majority of them may have problems reading small text, you want to make, use a white background with black text. That is objectively the easiest thing to read. And make the font bigger. So you notice it has larger font, and it's not worried about, what colors it's using. It's using colors that will distract you. All right. So that's thinking about the audience. Colors also have cultural meaning. So let me see. I want to make sure I cover everything important today. Okay. I'll come back to this here. Cultural meaning of colors. Okay, so colors have different meanings in different cultures, and you might say, well, I don't really need to care about that, but the world is globalizing, and if you aren't aware of the meanings of different colors in cultures, you can make some extremely offensive mistakes. If you're making something for a company, you just gave ammo to people to give them a bad reputation. You want to avoid things like that. So there are a lot of cultures, and there are a lot of meanings in different cultures. You can't cover everything. So if your website is for what's that Mexican restaurant in Mattoon? Their audience is limited to where they can deliver to, or people that are going to drive there to get food. So they probably don't need to worry about outside. And Mattoon is not that diverse of a place. Well, you bring up a good point, Alex, and if you're browsing at night, it can really bother you if everything's white, and so some places do allow you to pick a dark theme, like Google Chrome, or not, Gmail does. I'm looking at my Gmail all the time. At night I'm checking, in the morning I'm checking, at night I don't want this bright screen glaring at me. But there are sites that don't let you change that. And so you can get extensions that will flip the CSS. So I got this one. It's called Dark Night Mode. I think I have some other ones too, but this one so far is my favorite. And so you can just turn on Dark Night Mode on any page, and it flips it around so your eyes aren't burning. So I recommend that if you use the internet a lot. You can probably imagine I use a computer quite a bit, and I'm browsing the internet a lot. So I'm a good source for finding tools that'll help you browse the internet. Okay. So I'm glad you brought that up, Alex. So there's just 3 more things here. Well, let's just go through them, and then we'll come back and talk about cultural meanings of color. Okay, user graphics and multimedia. Another design decision that you need to focus on is how fast your website will load. And you can consider this even part of accessibility, all right, because not everyone has high-speed internet. There are even ways now where you can test someone's connection and deliver them a simpler website so that more people can use your site. I can't remember if this book goes over that, but if I remember, we might take a look. This right here, file size, is extremely important. This is going to affect how fast your website's going to load, because the HTML is just text. That takes an insignificant amount of time. But when you start loading videos and you start loading images, that adds a lot of overhead to loading the page. So if you overuse them, or for example, in my page I made here, I shrunk this picture down to 500 by 500 pixels, but the actual resolution of it is 3200 by 2400 pixels, and it has a size of 38.6 kilobytes. So that means if someone goes to my website here and they have this here, and it's only 500 by 500 displayed on here, but the image is 3200 by 2400, they have to download that larger image, even though you're not using it as a larger image. So using CSS to adjust the size has no effect on the loading speed or the file size. So if I only had this 500 by 500 pixel image, I'm wasting people's time by loading this, requiring them to download this. And so the way to fix that is, and this isn't part of the class that you have to learn as a skill, it's not a hard skill to learn, easy to teach yourself. On Windows, I use Microsoft Paint all the time. I'm just going to edit the image. Okay, and so you can see it's huge, 32 by 2400. I am going to hit resize by pixels, and I'm going to change this first number to 500. All right, and the aspect ratio of this will be maintained in the resize as long as I select maintain aspect ratio. And if you don't maintain aspect ratio, your image will look stretched or squished in certain situations, so you don't want to change that. Okay, so I just made this 500 by 500. I'm gonna save it as farm thumb.png. Okay. And so I have these two images. The 500 by 375 is still 27.2 kilobytes, which is 10 less kilobytes here. All right. It may seem insignificant amount because you're not going to notice the difference between 38 kilobytes and 27 kilobytes when you're loading a page, but the web server that is delivering that image is going to be sending it to everyone who accesses the site. So, if 1 million people access your site, you can take 1 million times 10 kilobytes. That's a lot of bandwidth, and you can measure that. Actually, you can convert that to how much it costs. So you can actually measure this difference in money. So if you're working on a site for a business or an organization who, if it's a nonprofit and they need to, keep track of how much money or reduce their spending, you can do that. If it's a business and you need to get anything done, talk about it in terms of saving money or adding value. And so this directly adds value in a few different ways. And so now on my website, instead of loading the farm.png, which is the large one, I am going to upload my farm thumb, and I'm going to use that picture in my image instead. So here's my image element. I'm changing the src attribute from farm to farm thumb. Okay, so now when they load the web page, they're downloading the smaller image file. And look, it doesn't look any different. Let's make sure I'm loading the new image here. What did I change here? Oh, I only changed the width to... No, I changed the height and width. Okay. Making sure this is actually changing the image here. Okay. Browsers also use something called caching. So if you visit a website for the first time and you have to download images, your browser will keep those images, and so the next time you visit the site, it will use them. It'll pull the images from your computer. So that's just a way to also to make your browsing faster. Let's see. And the reason I bring that up is while you're working on these files, when you make changes, sometimes your browser won't reflect those changes because it's pulling them from, it'll pull images from the cache. And in Chrome, what am I looking at? I'm looking at lost my train of thought there. Oh well, maybe it'll come to me later. Okay. Oh, anyway, yeah. How do you refresh how do you force the page to re-download things? So force refresh Chrome. There's a hotkey for it, and I think maybe even if you, let's see what happens if you right click. Nope. Okay. Hold down Control and press F5. So if you're not sure if you got the latest images from a website, you hold Control, hit F5, and it will re-request those files. All right. So understanding the file size of your images and only using the size you need will increase the efficiency of your website, let it load faster. That makes it better for the user, better user experience. All right. Let's not worry about this. Let's not worry about this. I want to talk about wireframes and sitemaps. I did provide, hopefully, yeah, I think for these classes I provided a page number in the book where they explain these. I may have already talked about it, but this is basically a blueprint for a page. And so you create the blueprint, and then the pages you create from that follow the blueprint. Why would you waste your time making this? Well, this is part of the planning step. And so this gives you an intermediate, it doesn't take very long to create one of these at all. If you've done the assignment, you know, you just drag some boxes on there. You can use anything that lets you create images to create a wireframe. I give you a tool that kind of, a link to a tool that lets you, gives you some basic tools to do it, and it also has cloud storage to share your wireframe for free. I have no idea when they get rid of those, so if you do want to keep it, make sure you download it. Anyway, so we have placeholders in here. We use lorem ipsum for text placeholders. You just use a generic box or a generic image for images. You can put some specific information in there, but the idea is you create this, and then you know, if it needs to be approved by, if the site needs to be approved by people, you want to do it incrementally, and you want them to approve the layout before you design the whole site, because it takes a lot more work to make the site. So this is an intermediate step. This would be an example of a home page. Here, this may be an example of a content page. So here they've organized the content into 3 columns. And then I think we already talked about site maps up here. You know, it's just a, again, this is part of the planning stage. It's just a layout of how you plan to organize the site. And I showed you a diagramming tool that can help you build that. Keep those tools in mind, especially the diagramming tool. I use that all the time to make illustrations and diagrams that help people understand things. You can communicate a lot with an image. Okay. The other thing is, now that everyone's browsing on their phone, it's extremely important that you have a mobile, you know, a site that works on mobile and on a computer and on a tablet. So there are techniques that we'll learn to, you know, prevent you from having to, in the past people would design 2 separate sites, and so you'd have to pay for both sites, and if you wanted to update, you would have to update both. You'd have to pay the person to make changes on both, and now we have ways to detect the resolution of the whatever browser people are using, and then it can lay out the page properly. And one of those things is a CSS framework called Flexbox, and there's one called Grid. Flexbox is good for creating a site that works both in mobile and on a computer, and you only have to design one site. It is a little more complicated. There are a lot of things you have to understand. Not impossible to learn. So I'll show you an example of that here. I may have showed you this site before. Oops, there it is. So this is a web app that I built, and it uses Flexbox. Alright, and so here, you know, on the desktop, I should probably add some, you know, space between these, but if I zoom out, it adjusts to keep, you know, to maximize the number of items on the page. If I zoom in, it, you know, makes them easier to read, and, you know, on mobile, it puts it in a single column, and so people can scroll down through. All right, so, you know, the idea behind creating this website was I wanted to, you know, practice using Flexbox, and it also uses something called an API, which pulls information from another website and uses that to fill in the content for my site. So I'm pulling all of these images and scores and names from another site. Okay, so that is pretty much it for chapter 5. I still have some time, so I am going to talk about the cultural meaning of color here, because it's very interesting. And you should, you know, a lot of people are pushing to be, you know, to work on your diversity. And again, in Mattoon, there's not a lot of opportunities to interact with people from different cultures. And so, you know, you may have been sheltered. That was me before I went to grad school. I grew up in a small town and, you know, had little to no diversity. And so I had to learn all this stuff, you know, by meeting people and doing research. Okay, so cultural meaning of color. All right, and there's a lot of sites with examples. So let's think about our culture. You know, black, What things do you think about with black? Maybe nighttime, death. Those are some things. I'm just going to say what I think of, but you can post post in the chat if you have some good suggestions, because they mean a lot of things. Okay, and they even mean a lot of things within our culture in the U.S. in different areas, but this is talking about around the world, and it's important to consider this, because if you're designing a website that people from around the world are going to access, you want to make sure you don't make a mistake and offend someone on accident. If you're doing it on purpose, then you can use the wrong colors, but if you don't want to do it on accident. Okay, blue, we think of water, sometimes depression, the music, the blues, calmness. Green, you think of plants, money, wealth, things like that. Red, fire, emergency, stop. Okay, yellow, cowardly, slow down, warning. Orange, I always think of the fruit because it's in, they called it the color. Okay, other things for orange, again, like warning, fire. Okay, white is, weddings. White, I don't know why. I'm not married. I don't know why I'm thinking of weddings. I think I've been like 3 weddings in my life. Apparently swans. No. I'm drawing a blank on this one. Okay, we already talked about black. Okay, so that's what it means to us, or at least to me, and so I can assume some of you also think of similar things. So blue is, it says here, blue is the safest color choice. It's going to offend the least cultures. That's what they're saying here. I mean, I don't know what source they have, but it has the most positive associations. So some of the things, in our culture, it says trust, security, and authority. Soothing and peaceful. We already talked about that. Okay, in some countries, blue symbolizes healing and evil repellents. Okay, I don't, that doesn't make any sense to us, or to me anyway. I've never seen it represented that way. Turkey, Greece, Iran, Afghanistan, and Albania. Blue-shaped amulets protect against the evil eye. Some of this stuff that you read may be just wrong too, so make sure you take it with a grain of salt unless you're taking it from a reputable source. This is just the first link I found. Okay, Western culture. Oh, I forgot luck. Green is for luck. I said some of this other stuff. Wealth. Green is emblematic for Ireland. So, they may take it a lot more seriously. Green has been traditionally been forbidden in Indonesia. Go figure, I don't know why. In Mexico, it's a national color that stands for independence. What color represents independence for us? Red, white, and blue, right? So we can relate to that, but that's what this site says anyway, that represents independence for them. In the Middle East, green represents fertility, traditional color. Eastern cultures, youth, fertility, and new life, but it can also mean infidelity. So if you were making a website that also, people in Eastern countries were going to use, you probably don't want to make it about something about good relationships. You probably don't want to use green. In China, green hats are taboo for men because it signals that their wives have committed adultery. All right. Some of this stuff sounds fake. Like maybe one person said it. Don't take it. I already said this, but don't take it. Okay. For truth always. Okay. Red, associated with communism. Okay. That has kind of died down in our culture anyway. because if you study history or understand history, communism has been extremely misrepresented. Our country, the government has, we're a democracy, but we have, all kinds of things that are socialist ideas, communist ideas. If you only pick one way to be, it may not be the best for every situation. So, the idea of communism being evil is just, wrong. Okay. Revolution. In Asian cultures, red is a very important color. It symbolizes luck, joy, prosperity, celebration. This is true. Red envelopes containing money are given out during holidays and special occasions. So, India, red is associated with spirituality. Africa, associate red with death. If you think about situations where it would be inappropriate to represent death on your website. It's considered a lucky charm in Egypt, good fortune in Iran. In Western cultures, yellow is optimism more. The sun, I didn't think about that. I said fire, warnings. Cowardice. Okay. In Germany, it represents envy. In Egypt, it conveys good fortune. Orange. Okay. In Hinduism, saffron, a soft orange color, is considered auspicious and sacred. Okay, so that could be offensive if you use it in, a way that is sacrilegious or whatever. Okay, in Netherlands, orange is the color of the royal family and represents sexuality and fertility. In Colombia, in Eastern cultures, symbolizes love, happiness, humility. Monks' robes are orange. All right. I've seen that in the popular media. I don't know. Purple. Royalty and wealth. Nobility. I think that is because purple was a hard color to get, so only the wealthy could get it, and so that made it a status symbol. Now that everyone can get purple, it's kind of lost that meaning. It's like in the song where it says, purple mountains, majesty. I always think of that. Okay. In Japan, highest ranked Buddhist monks wore purple robes, saying in the past that happened, I guess, is what they're saying. Associated with piety and faith. In Catholicism, penitence. Okay. Brazil and Thailand, purple is the color of mourning. Color of honor in our culture, so they give out the Purple Heart to members of the military. White, purity, elegance, peace, cleanliness. Okay, in China and Korea, white represents death, so it's kind of the opposite than we consider. Death, mourning, and bad luck. All right, we usually consider white, in positive ways, where they use it, in negative ways. They wear white at funerals, where we usually wear darker colors. Okay, black, sophistication and formality, death, evil, mourning, illness, the Black Plague, right? Okay. So, and then they're making a good point here. As companies become more global, if you have a large company and you are avoiding going global, you are hamstringing yourself. And knowing this stuff can help you avoid embarrassing situations and potential, loss of money for the business. Okay. All right. And then, if you are designing a website for another culture, you would want to research the meanings of different things like that. Okay.
that's it. We'll start, I guess we didn't have time for chapter 6. We'll start that next time. Next, either Tuesday or Wednesday. Oh, let's see, what's today? Wednesday. Probably next Tuesday. I like to alternate those days. All right, so I'll see you next week. Have a good rest of your week, and have a good day. All right.